Hey guys! So today's video is actually going to be one about the Gainesville Ripper, which a lot of people have probably heard of but maybe didn't realize was a big inspiration for the movie Scream back in the 90s. And I'll go into sort of where the inspiration shows through into the film at the end of the video. So Danny Harold Rolling was the Gainesville Ripper. He was an American serial killer who murdered 5 students in Gainesville, Florida over 4 days in August of 1990. Rolling later confessed to raping several of his victims and committing an additional murder on November 4th of 1989, which was a triple homicide in Shreveport, Louisiana, as well as attempting to murder his father in May of 1990. In total, Rolling confessed to murdering 8 people, and he was sentenced to death for the 5 murders in 1994. The 5 murders being those of the students. He was executed by lethal injection in 2006. Now, Rolling was born and grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and his father was a police officer there named James Rolling, who often told Danny that he had been unwanted from birth and apparently abused his mother Claudia, as well as Danny's brother Kevin. In one incident, Danny's mother went to the hospital claiming that her husband tried to force her to cut herself with a razor. She made repeated attempts to leave her husband, but always returned to him. As a teenager and as a young adult, Danny was arrested several times for robberies in Georgia and was actually caught spying on women in dressing rooms. As an adult, he did attempt to assimilate himself into normal society and hold down a steady job. However, in May of 1990, he attempted to kill his father during a family argument in which his father lost an eye and an ear. Now, in August of that same year, 1990, Rolling murdered 5 students. 4 of these students were attending the University of Florida, and 1 attended Santa Fe College. Now, these murders happened during a burglary and robbery spree in Gainesville. The interesting and disgusting thing about these murders that really stand out to people, and in my opinion had a big influence on some underlying themes of the film Scream, was that he would mutilate his victims, even decapitating one, and pose them for when they were found. The first murder happened in the early morning hours of Friday, August the 24th. He broke into an apartment that was shared by a 17-year-old freshman by the name of Sonia Larson and another 17-year-old freshman, Christina Powell. He found Powell asleep downstairs on the couch and stood over her briefly, but decided not to wake her up. He chose instead to explore the upstairs, where he found Larson, who was also asleep. Rolling murdered Larson, first taping her mouth shut to stifle her screams, and then by stabbing her to death. She died while trying to fend him off. Rolling then went back downstairs, put tape over Powell's mouth, bound her wrists together behind her back, and threatened her with a knife as he cut off her clothes. He then raped her and forced her face down onto the floor, where he stabbed her 5 times in the back. Rolling posed the bodies in sexually provocative positions. He then took a shower before leaving the apartment, but not before taking Christina's nipples as trophies. Now, these photos have never been released to the public, and I am very glad for the victims' families' sake. They have talked about how much more difficult their lives would have probably been coping with this had the photos of the crime scene and of the bodies been released. So that's just a side note to this. There are no photos of these bodies, of the poses, anything like that. And for the victims' family's sake, I'm glad about that. Now, a day later, Saturday, August the 25th, Rolling broke into the apartment of 18-year-old Krista Hoyt by prying open a sliding glass door using a knife and a screwdriver. Finding that she was not home, he waited in the living room for her to return. At about 11 a.m., Hoyt returned to her apartment, and Rolling surprised her from behind, placing her in a chokehold. After she had been subdued, he taped her mouth shut, bound her wrists together, and led her to the bedroom, where he cut the clothes from her body and raped her. Same as in the Powell murder, he forced her face down and stabbed her in the back, 1 or more of these stabs actually rupturing her heart. He then decapitated the body, and posed her head on a shelf facing the corpse to shock whoever was to discover this body. Now, by this point, the murders had attracted a widespread attention from the media, and many students were taking extra precautions, such as changing their daily routines and sleeping in groups. Because the spree was happening so early in the fall, many students withdrew from the school completely. 23-year-old Tracy Pauls was living with Manny Taboda, who was also 23, and on Monday, August 27th, Rolling broke into the apartment by, again, prying open the glass sliding door with the same tools he used at the previous murder, and he found Taboda asleep in one of the bedrooms, and after having a struggle with him, eventually killed the young man. Now, hearing this commotion, Pauls went down the hall to Taboda's bedroom, and she saw Rolling there. She attempted to barricade herself in her bedroom, but Rolling made his way in. He taped her mouth and wrists, and as per all of the other murders, female murders, cut her clothes off and raped her before turning her over and stabbing her 3 times in the back. He again posed Paul's body, but left Taboda's in the same position that he was killed in. So he was taking special care with his female victims to leave them in very sexual positions. With the exception of Taboda, all of the victims were petite, Caucasian, brunettes with brown eyes. Now, although law enforcement initially had very few leads, they did sort of settle upon 2 main suspects. However, these suspects were completely cleared once Rollings had confessed to the murders down the road. Later, on September 7th of 1990, Rolling was arrested in Ocala on a burglary charge. And in the course of that investigation, his tools were matched to the marks that were left at the Gainesville murder scenes. The small one-man camp that he had been living in a wooded area near some apartment complexes where students lived, including those homes of the victims. This was found by police, and it was there that investigators discovered recordings that Rolling had made of himself, singing country songs that he had composed, and audio diaries alluding to the crimes. He was charged with several counts of murder in November of 1991. Now, Rolling was brought to trial by State Attorney Len Register nearly 4 years after the murders happened. He claimed that his motive was to become a superstar like Ted Bundy. And in 1994, before the trial even went underway, he pled guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to death on each count of murder, and at this point, it was only the 5 murders of those students. And during his trial, Court TV actually aired an interview with his mother, where you can apparently hear his father screaming obscenities or whatever in the background. Rolling was sentenced to death on April 20th of 1994, and he was actually diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and paraphilia. Now, after Rolling had been arrested, police in Louisiana alerted authorities in Florida to an unsolved triple murder in Shreveport from November 4th of 1989. Detectives noted that there were many similarities between the Louisiana murders and the Florida murders. The Louisiana murders involved a 55-year-old man by the name of William Grissom, his 24-year-old daughter Julie, and his 8-year-old grandson Sean. The family had been attacked in their home while preparing for dinner. Afterwards, Julie Grissom's body had been mutilated, cleaned, and posed. Shortly before he was executed in Florida for the 5 murders of the students in the Florida universities, Danny Rolling handed his spiritual advisor, Reverend Mike Hudspeth, and Florida police a handwritten confession and apology to the triple murders that he said he had committed 17 years prior in Shreveport. Now, his execution was done again by lethal injection at Florida State Prison on October 25th of 2006. Rolling had a last meal of lobster tail, and he sang a gospel hymn, but made no statement immediately prior to his execution. His execution was witnessed by many of the family members of the victims, and he was pronounced dead at 6:13 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, in my opinion of the inspiration for the Scream films, which was written by Kevin Williamson, if you've seen the Scream films, they're all about the rules of horror movies and the rules of basically murder, and a lot of it has to do with sex. One of the big rules being not to have sex. If you lose your virginity, you're going to get murdered. I believe personally that this lines up with these murders in that he killed these women and left them in very sexual positions. Whether he was commenting on them personally or maybe women as a whole as sort of, you know, women are whores or women are this, or if he was commenting, you know, using that as women should be this or women are only good for this, we may never know. He seems to have just stated basically that he wanted to shock people, which could have also been, it could have been as simple as something like that. But I think that him adding such a sexual aspect to these murders and trying to leave an infamy or, you know, just sort of an iconic thing, and either tie it to himself or tie it to these poor girls, is really what was used in the Scream films, in these roles. But it's interesting nonetheless, learning about these and knowing that that film had such a very real inspiration. A lot of people think it was just commentary on other horror films, which it definitely was, but to know that it had something happen like this and so soon prior to the film. I want to say the first film was like 96 or 98 or something. Yeah, these murders happened in 1990, so it really was not that, you know, soon before this that this happened. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button below. If you have any suggestions for videos, true crime or otherwise, please leave those in the comments below. If you want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button. I upload new videos every Wednesday. And other than that, I will see you guys next week.